Hello, Lynn Testoni.
Hello, Rachel Smith. How are you?
We're back, and I can see by your backdrop that you are somewhere luscious. Where are you?
Yes, I'm at the holiday house. I've recorded a few podcasts up here. Gotta love the NBN in obscure places.
Yes, and welcome to all our new listeners. I know there's a few knocking about in the last few weeks. So in case you haven't heard the podcast before, we are the Content Bite. We are a podcast for people who use their words to make money. And I'm Rachel Smith, Rachel's List person, founder, freelance journalist, content writer, copywriter. What about you, Lynn? What do you do?
Oh, pretty much the same. My name's Lynn Testoni, and I'm a content creator and a journalist, writer, and podcast host, of course.
Oh, yeah, we need to throw that in more often.
We should. And of course, I should say, Rachel, you've got an amazing new website. I think for ages we talked on the podcast about you finally getting around to updating your website, and you did it recently. Do you feel excited and proud?
You know what? Beyond excitement and pride, I just feel like this pure, unadulterated relief that it's done and I can tick it off my to-do list, because it really did take so long to do it and to finalize it. I had to pull people in at the end to help a little bit, and but it's great. Look, if anyone wants to
fantastic.
if anyone wants to look at it, shameless plug, it's rachelsmith.com.au.
Nice.
I look a bit like a Smurf because the opening banner is just a blue wash over my face. I'm very
Quite
blue.
like that. I think it looks really good. You've done some great graphics there. And I also think another little shameless plug is that we should mention that wonderful thing you've got on Rachel's List of do your own website. What's it called?
It's called Finish Your Damn Website Already.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a co-working session, a monthly co-working session, and it's 2 hours. You don't actually have to work on your website. You can come and work on anything, a deadline, story, some admin, whatever you're doing, some pitching to editors or clients. But yeah, it's good fun.
That helped you finish, didn't it?
I think it gave me the motivation because I kept doing it every month, this co-working thing, and we have a web developer who comes along and she takes people into a private room and sort of helps them with their website issues. And I actually never went into the private room because I was doing it for Rachel's List members to try and help them finish their websites. But then over Christmas I thought, this is ridiculous. I have got to get this done. So now I actually feel like I'm not a fraud running the session. But anyway, yes.
Oh dear. But today we were going to talk about something that you and I do all the time, obviously.
Yes.
And
Drink
it's
tea.
Interesting. Yeah, besides drinking your tea, I'm coffee. But we're talking about writing well and our tips for writing. And I thought it was funny when we started talking about this, you felt you didn't have a lot to offer. You just do it. But then, of course, once you got going, you knew there's a lot of stuff. You are a really good writer. And I think that you probably do these things instinctively now when you've been doing it for a while. So it's good to stop and think about what we do.
Yes, well, thank you for saying that. You're a great writer yourself, and I think you're right. What I was saying is, I can write and I can put something together, in a way that I'm really happy with, and obviously that my editors and clients are happy with. But I don't feel that I know how to teach that, which is why I've been offered teaching gigs before, and I don't take them because I don't feel like I could teach it. It's funny, you either know how or you don't, maybe. But
Maybe.
yeah.
So we thought we'd share. So we both write, but we probably have little different tips and everything. So I thought perhaps you can share your top tips for writing, what you use to make you a better writer, and then I'll share mine. So you go first, Rachel. What are your best tips?
Okay, well, my first tip is, I want to say dumb it down, but I don't actually mean that. I mean, make your writing accessible. That's my first tip. So I think what I mean by that is you wouldn't use those big words. You might be tempted to use big words, but resist. So,
Clarity is everything.
It is. And I think it makes your writing sound less pretentious. I mean, you wouldn't put utilize in a sentence when you could use the word use instead, or you wouldn't say commence when you could use begin or start. So it's all about making your writing readable and accessible. And I think now is probably a good time to mention that the average reading age of an adult is 9 to 11. And
Oh
that
my
just
goodness.
blows my mind. I don't know about
Mm.
you, but I can't believe that. I actually can't believe that's true, but it keeps coming up in study after study. So if you're writing web copy, you need to kind of keep that in mind and think about how you put a story together in terms of making it accessible to a wide range of reading abilities, I
Ages and
suppose.
stages. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Okay, my second tip is keep it short. And I, more than anyone, can fall prey to writing long, rambling sentences and talking in long, rambling sentences, as the podcast listeners will know. And I think when I'm writing those types of sentences, I think, oh, that's so clever. But then you actually, get a kick up the bum when you start working in digital and you have to start experimenting with shorter, chunkier sentences. And I think a good way to think about this is one sort of idea per sentence. Do you do that? Or think in that way?
Yes, I do. I actually think one of my best things is because I started at a newspaper many, many years ago, and we only did one sentence per paragraph. And
Mm.
that's the way, and also those grumpy old subs behind me used to yell at me if I didn't follow those rules. And I think that did give me clarity and simplify. And I was taught, similar to you, that yeah, well, I was taught the average reading age was 12 then. So I had to make sure that all my copy would be accessible for, say, a 12-year-old. And I think that helps. And I used to have old subs who take out things like utilize and stuff. So I think, yes, definitely. There's a
Yeah.
lot that I definitely agree with all of that.
Yeah.
What's your
Okay. So,
next tip?
my third tip is actually something that we put in the wrap up last week. The wrap up is the Rachel's List Friday night newsletter. And we'll put a link to the show notes if you want to get your hands
I
on it.
do love your wrap up.
It's a bumper newsletter with loads of links about writing and content writing and freelancing in general and jobs and all kinds of things. So we'll put a link to that if you're interested in it and you're not already a subscriber. But we did have a link to editors talking about the filler words that they really hate. And this is one of mine. I think, it's something that you can fall prey to if you're always writing in that conversational tone. You can use those filler words to try, it sort of helps you create that chatty style, I suppose. But I think it can perhaps it can sort of dilute the power of what you're trying to say. I think
Definitely.
when you slash and burn all those filler words, your writing automatically becomes tighter and more powerful. And yeah, so we're talking about things like words like really, just, very, rather, actually, absolutely, certainly. Those are all sort of filler, fluff type words that usually you can get rid of.
Yeah.
But also there are phrases that you can also, keep an eye out for in your writing, like needless to say, in order to, there is, for all intents and purposes. I've never written that. I don't know about you. But I have written in my opinion. So I'm looking out for that. But yeah, so that's a big one as well. And when I was doing a little bit of research for this, I came across a Mark Twain quote, and he said, you should substitute damn every time you're inclined to write the word very, and your editor will delete it and the writing will be just as it should be. So
That's good. I don't know if they delete damn now, but yes.
I like that. Okay. So my fourth tip is keep it clean. And that's, I think we've talked before about, writing copy that's really tight and clean.
And you mean clean as in error-free, spelt
Yes.
right, grammatically correct? Yeah.
Absolutely. And the way that I do this, and I feel like I'm very much in the minority of the person who prints out their final draft, because every time I talk to an editor friend or a writer friend, they always say, I can't believe that you print out your final draft. I haven't printed out a final draft in years, but I
You
still
do.
do it. It's like I have to do it. I print it out and then I walk around the house reading it aloud. So I sound like a complete nitwit, but it helps me see if it actually flows and if it sounds okay and I can pick up every little thing. And also I think that, if you do submit copy that's on the word count, it's really to brief, it's really tight and really clean, it does stop editors messing with it. Do you think that?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Because once somebody has to tidy up a few grammatical or spelling errors or something, they're going to get stuck into the rest of it, and you lose, yeah, the integrity of your original piece. Definitely.
I know. So essentially you are training your editors not to mess with your copy.
Yeah. Well, maybe it just engenders respect for your words as well. And then they think this is great, this is Rachel's, it's clean, I'll put it through without touching
Mm.
it. Yeah.
Mm. I have found though, the more that I do content marketing, the same is not true of brands. And
Yes.
I don't think that that's because, um, my writing is worse for brands or content marketing. But I think when you're writing in that sort of space, you're at the mercy of content managers and marketing managers possibly, and also compliance departments. And so
Yes.
often,
A lot more
they
people too will look at the copy.
exactly.
And
And so
there
it
is a
will come
tendency
back.
for everybody who has a look at it to add something because they
Yep.
want to justify their existence
Yep.
and want to justify their role or have even some internal conversation between them, you know.
Yep.
Should we call it this or should we call it that? And it's often just semantics about a word. Mm.
That's so true. So if you're going from a journalism kind of magazine background into content marketing, just be aware that you might get a rude shock. Your copy being flung back at you all the time with all this kind of, well, the digital version of Red Pen. So that was my fourth one. The last one is spend time on your opening paragraph. I reckon that I do more time on that opener than the rest of the story. That once you've got that nailed down, the story just seems to fall into place. But this could be so many things. It could be, you open with a fact or a figure. You could open with a sentence that creates drama, or an anecdote from someone in your story, or even a question. I love opening with a question. Doesn't always work, but
Ah,
sometimes. But you know best what the piece that you're writing dictates. Whether it's a straight up and down article, or if it's a yarn, it's a piece of storytelling that takes the reader on a journey. So, work on that opener and make it as good as you can get it, because that's what's going to pull the reader in and keep them with you for the remainder if you get it right, I think. So that's my last little
that's
tip
your
for
last
the
tip. Oh,
day.
that's great. I'll come to mine because I've got the absolute opposite then in a second. So I'll tell you my tips. So I guess my number one tip is I know I've said this before, but it's all about reading. I read, right? And I try and read a lot of good fiction, particularly whenever I can. And I know it helps me to be a better writer. I think using I just hearing good turns of phrase, clever words, nice analogies, it all helps to inspire me, make me work harder at making my writing better. I'm in awe of some really good fiction writers, and I think whenever I read that, it does inspire me to be better.
I
And
agree. I agree. Yes, reading
and
widely
sometimes there
can help.
are, I don't know about you, there's a couple of amazing, I guess, journalists or columnists who've written beautiful books and some compilation of some of their columns. I mean, I know you've just read Caitlin Moran's book, which is a series of wonderful columns. Um, uh, and I think that inspired me some wonderful, witty ways to tackle really interesting subjects in that. I've got some compilations of A.A. Gill, who honestly is one of the best restaurant reviewers
Mm.
ever. And as a journalist, I mean, it's a bit old school, but Clive James'
Oh, I
stories on
love.
television, extraordinary.
Yeah.
Um, and there's a food writer that I really loved called Jeffrey Steingarten, and he'd been the editor or food writer for Vogue, US Vogue, for years and years. And the way he writes about food is wonderful and so clever. So
Mm.
sometimes reading good writing and sometimes even having those books on hand when I'm feeling like I'm in a slump, reading them. And it's just sometimes the way they frame a sentence or a paragraph really inspires me.
Yeah.
I've been also listening to on Audible, Evelyn Waugh, Brideshead Revisited, read by Jeremy Irons, which is so amazing. But I just listen to the way Evelyn Waugh writes, and there's little phrases that is just extraordinary. And as I'm walking, listening to that, I just come back and I want to write better. And
Yep.
sometimes I come back with it's never the words, it's about the phrasing, and I think that's good.
Yeah.
Um,
This kind of reminds me of what we were talking about in a previous episode of the copywriting swipe file, where you find
yes,
you find those little tidbits of beautiful, turns of phrases, and you keep them for
I do.
inspiration later. I love that as well. Yeah.
Sometimes I just have and sometimes when I come back from this, I might have a story that's due in a while, or it might be something that I think of or hear. I think a great way to describe something, and I might put it in a file for a Word document and just keep it as a swipe file, an inspiration thing, which is great.
Mm.
The second thing I do is sometimes I go back and reread my old work,
Oh, I do
particularly,
that too. Yeah. And you
and I
think, did
get
I write that?
yes. Yes, because we did talk last week a bit about trying to write a lot and be manage lots of things. And if you're writing 10 pieces of content, sometimes I forget. And I go back and I actually feel good about myself and my writing. And then also I get inspired to write more. And this particularly is helpful if you're writing a lot about similar subjects,
Mm.
because you go back and you think, oh, that was a good point I made back then. I could actually now create, I could do a extension of that story, or I could use that little fact and turn it into a whole piece. And sometimes I get inspired. I even
I
some
think the key though in going back and reading your old work is don't go back like before 5 years. Like definitely don't go back 20 years, because then you'll just want to take to your bed with a bottle of vodka and not leave.
yes, yes, yeah.
Sorry, I derailed you there.
No, that's true. Oh no, that's true. And sometimes I even scan old transcripts of interviews for good ideas and interesting sort of things. One thing I do, and this is something I have to work on because I can do it too much and be a bit dependent. I use a lot of quotes in my articles. I often do research and I quote. I do a lot of interviews, and when in doubt, to try and make a story more interesting, I write it. I do tend to use a lot of clever experts and external people, and that helps to take the articles out of my voice and separate it into a more independent piece of writing. And I think it makes it fresher.
I
I
completely
actually
agree. And isn't it hard going from a journalism background to a content marketing background where it's desk research only for the majority of the stuff that you have
Yes,
to write,
exactly.
and they don't
Yeah,
want the quotes, and you actually think, I don't know if I can actually do it. It's a
I
real
find it
learning curve.
hard. Yeah,
Yeah,
so I've had
me
to, that's
too.
something I have to work at. But I actually think generally, as long as it's not overused, quotes do tend to make a story cleverer and fresher.
Mm.
Now this is probably a real obvious like duh moment, but the next thing I do is I mix up the length of my sentences. It's a bit of an oldie but a goodie, that never make your sentences all the same length, because that tends, no matter how clever they are, tends to make a story boring in its pace, and it develops a bit of a monotone like pace no matter how clever you are.
Yep.
And if you need to use a combination of short and long sentences, which helps to make the story more exciting and the pace less predictable. And one thing I do, as we've talked before, a bit of public speaking, and that's something that also is the same principle applies when you do presentations or speeches or PowerPoint or something, because it also keeps an audience alert and awake if you mix up the pace, and that's important, particularly if you've got a longer piece.
So
And try,
true. So
yeah,
true. That's a great tip.
yeah. Now, this is a bit different from what you're saying. One thing I've learned, and this is something I had to train myself into, is pay as much attention to the end of the story as the beginning.
Is this your fourth tip? I've lost count.
My fifth. I
Your
keep
fifth tip.
going.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
um,
Sorry. Yeah. The last
yeah,
bit of the story. Okay.
yeah. Because I once read an article and I thought it really resonated, that pointed out you might read the beginning of a story 5 or 6 times, but the ending only once or twice. So sometimes we've ended up polishing the first half so much better than the end.
Mm.
And so now I know that my endings used to be weaker than my beginnings. And that's also a hangover from my early days as a journalist, when we were taught that because you used to cut from the bottom. So the best part of the story was always at the top. But that doesn't apply anymore. It doesn't apply in digital, and even in magazine feature writing, which is the other
Exactly.
major. It
Yes.
has to be all well structured. And now it's an easy trap to fall into, that you have a snappy and big clever beginning and you never spend the same amount of time at the end tying it all together. So now I often try and make sure I read the second half more times. Once it's gone there, I keep going back, starting in the middle and finishing it, and to try and make up for that. And I also often write, you were talking about writing the beginning. I also try and quite often write the end when I write the beginning, and then I fill in between. So the end always has some sort of relationship to the beginning of the copy. and the end, so it has a lovely little bookmark. And
I was
that,
just going to say that. I
mm,
kind of do that as well in feature writing. You always try and somehow relate back to the beginning
yes,
when you're wrapping up, and if you can do that, and it kind of feels like a closure on the
it does.
piece,
It's a
if you can
beautiful
get it,
framing.
yeah, yeah,
And I think sometimes you do that by using a significant word or a quote, and sometimes you
or a
just do it in
statement.
the, or a statement, and sometimes you might just do it in the pacing or the framing of the first and last sentence. So it might be a
Mm.
similar length or a similar sort of way it's structured.
I
Um,
remember when you were at Wiser and you used to commission those amazing columns, the in praise of columns.
oh yes, yeah, I love those. Yes,
And I think I did a couple for you. I might have done
you did in praise of a cup of tea.
in praise of a cup of tea. That was one of my favorites. And in praise of the 50-year-old brain or something.
Oh yes.
But in regards to what you were saying about, focusing on the ending, sorry, we have random music going off. We don't know why.
That was my husband texting me.
Oh, all right. I feel like those columns were a really good way to practice that whole the circle. What am I trying to
Yes,
say?
that framing, the
Yeah, there's a
sentences.
phrase and it's gone out of my brain because it's
Mm.
Sunday and my brain's dead. Yeah, it's sort of like that circular kind of writing. Those columns
Mm.
were really good of doing that. And you had to finish on a kind of pithy statement or something clever, to wrap
Yes.
it up.
Mm.
So yeah. Yeah,
That's
I love
so
that one.
good.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, yeah. So that's important. I got a couple of extra ones because I was in the
Oh,
zone.
oh,
I
you
was in
were.
the zone. Um,
You'll be called into uni to do a course.
yeah. I guess this is also really basic too, but sometimes it's good to repeat the basic things because also I used to get taught and yelled at by old sub editors, and rising young journalists don't have those sort of grumpy old people telling them how to do things anymore. But and because it doesn't mean it doesn't work, I actually use a thesaurus quite a lot because it helps to extend my vocabulary and sometimes gets me thinking. So quite often when I'm doing my first draft, I don't often stop to polish the words, but I just put in the most obvious word, and it could be really boring. And then I type that word later into thesaurus.com and come up with different ideas. And then it starts to get a flow, and that helps me to polish the copy and get it a little bit better.
I do
And
that too. Thesaurus.com is totally on my bookmark bar.
yeah. And the other one I like is in rhymezone.com. They do rhymes, which is clever for those pithy things. But the things I really love, they have a phrases section, and they have clever phrases using the words. And
Mm.
sometimes that works as a nice way. You've got to be careful you don't turn it into a cliche, but that often helps you get a bit of a pace or a clever thing. And I use that a lot to get subheads throughout.
Yep.
My copy, particularly, you use a lot of subheads with digital copy to help with SEO. So I think that's good.
I've got a lot of those little tools as well. Maybe if we haven't already done an episode on that, maybe we should do a follow-up episode on the writing tools, digital writing tools that we both use.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I think we should.
Because there's
Yeah.
so many. But anyway, we've probably gone over time. Are you finished or have you got more tips?
I had one little tip, one
Oh,
last
good.
tip. Can I
Give
do
us the
this?
bonus tip. Give it
The
to us.
bonus tip
Yes.
is when in doubt, use alliteration.
Oh, yeah.
Because sometimes when you're trying to do something really boring, using alliteration, which is, using the same initial letter for things, sometimes
Mm,
makes it cleverer.
mm,
Just like I was just thinking of something really boring, like if I was writing a story on bedding, if I said bedding ideas is really boring, but calling it bedding basics somehow
mm,
sounds cleverer. And
mm.
also, particularly visually, having similar initial capitals looks really good, which is more important in things like magazines and even digitally when people are seeing the copy. It actually gets a nice visual flow as well. So
Mm.
that's a
Love
thing.
it. Love it, love it, love it. Well, I hope that everybody listening has gotten a little nugget out of our writing tips.
Who knew
we-
we knew so much stuff?
who knew that we knew so much? And we are open for university courses if anyone needs fill-ins. Well, actually, Lynn will do it because, as I mentioned, I don't want to teach anybody. But yeah, she's
Oh, you
available.
teach us. I was going to say you're teaching a 6-year-old every day. That's your skill.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, we will we'll be
back
off
next week.
Yes, we
Back
will.
next week, and fantastic. Have a lovely week.
Thank you, everybody. See you then.
Bye.
Bye.